This video is brought to you by the FMB shop, where you can find some of the best Scale 400 models. Find the link in the video description below. It is always a sad occasion when an aircraft type is being phased out, but when it leads to a model like we have here in front of us, it almost becomes, well, a celebration. So let's see what NG Models has come up with for the last ever 747. And with that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at a Boeing 747-8F of Atlas Air. At the front of the box we can already see this is a rather special aircraft, but we will of course dig into this much more in detail throughout this video. Suffice it to say, we have this really awesome collage, of course, showing us that this is the very last 747 ever to be produced, and I think this is actually a really spectacular box design overall, because it really matches the theme of this aircraft model. NG Models has done a great job with that. It can furthermore also be opened, and that reveals even more really awesome stuff, like this list with all first flight, first delivery and last deliveries of all various 747 aircraft types. Really awesome. And of course then it also reveals a first look at the aircraft model inside. Now, before we dig deeper into today's review, it is worth mentioning that this model, like all other NG models, of course, nowadays comes with this little card, which has a code for a rewards program. If you want to know more about it, pause the video here and read through what is written on the card. And here she is, the Boeing 747-8F, the very last 747 ever to be produced. And I categorized it as being of Atlas Air. That's of course because that's the airline that took delivery of this aircraft model, but obviously it doesn't have the Atlas Air livery just yet, and that's of course because this model shows it how it looked while it was, well, still in production. So I was kind of, well, I didn't quite know if I should call it an Atlas Air or just Boeing, or, well, but this is what we have here, and I would guess we could call it kind of the primer livery, as we have the primer colors on various aircraft parts here. If you disagree, then let me know what you would call this livery in the comments down below. But now let's focus on the aircraft model itself to see what it actually has to offer. For obvious reasons, we don't have any branding yet on the vertical stabilizers, but really lovely different primer colors on the different parts of the stabilizer. That looks really nice, and we have something similar also on the horizontal stabilizer. On the fuselage, however, we do already have a first indication as to where the aircraft is going in form of the registration code. Of course, now we know that it is going to Atlas Air, or has already been delivered, in fact. Then we also have one of the main cargo hatches here, and we can really lovely see the reinforcements around that hatch, and also one line that leads away water in real life from the hatch. So that's really awesome. Nicely made here from NG Models. Furthermore, we do of course also have a bit of detailing around the APU exhaust towards the very tail of the aircraft. Now, if we move to the front of the aircraft, of course also here we don't really have much branding, or any branding in fact, on this side of the aircraft at least. But again, we have some lovely detailing, for example, around the cabin door. That looks quite lovely. And we do of course also have a bunch of static ports and petro tubes, for example. That's also a lovely little addition here. And then we can move on to the cockpit section, where we of course have the main cargo hatch. It cannot be opened as it is not an interactive model, but we do have some lovely detailing around the cockpit windows with the window wipers. Again, a bunch of sensors, the emergency hatch for the cockpit, and also some lovely detailing at the radome. Now, as mentioned, we don't really have any Atlas Air related branding on the aircraft model so far, but when we look on the other side, we can see here on the fuselage we do have some really interesting stickers. Like, for example, this one with the Atlas Air branding, advertising that it is the 14th 747-8, and thereby of course also the last one. Then we have kind of a yellow primer just above the wing, and that's where I would assume you would normally have an emergency exit, which of course for a freighter would be deactivated. I think that's why it looks like this. Then behind that we have another little interesting logo, and that's of course then specifying that it is the last 747. Did you know that this review was made possible thanks to the great support of the FMB shop? Did you also know that they have awesome Scale 400 models on sale? NG models, JC Wings, Aviation 400, and as of late, also Panda models. What else could you wish for? Well, how about day one discounts, pre-order discounts, and sales throughout the year? So don't hesitate and find your next favorite model at the FMB shop. And even better, they also have scale 500 and 200. So check them out, links are in the video description below. And once again, thanks to the guys from the FMB shop for making this review possible. But let's move on from the fuselage to the engine nacelles, because that's definitely another highlight on this aircraft model. Now, again, obviously we don't have any branding, but that doesn't mean that NG Models doesn't put any effort into the details of these engines. We have some lovely printed details with the silver leading edge, and then a bunch of small hatches and markings and stuff that you just want on an engine. It looks so nice despite having no branding whatsoever. They have really gone all in. Also, the physical detailing is really lovely, especially here from the front. Very nice. You can see the engine fan blades. And from the fan blades, we can move on to the wings, which we definitely also want to take a closer look at, starting off with the top side, where we have the different flap slats and spoilers carved out really rather nicely. We have the markings as to where to walk on the wing. Then on the underside, we have more physical detailing, and again, a bunch of small printed details looking really very nice as well. But my little highlight, and I mean, how could it otherwise be, is the fact that we do have the landing lights, and again a bit of primer color here on the wing, looking really cool. But what about the landing gear? Well, that is made entirely out of metal, except of course for the wheels themselves. They are out of plastic. I think NG Models has done a really lovely job with the main landing gear. Here we also have a bunch of printed details with the hatches for the main landing gear, looking really great. We can also notice here in the belly we do have a hole in the fuselage, however for a stand that is not included with this aircraft model. The front landing gear is also looking really rather nice. Of course, we don't have any markings or registration codes printed on here, given that this wouldn't have been added at that stage of the production of the aircraft. So no critique of that. And finally, I should also mention that the wheels are rolling, in case that's a feature that is important for you. On the belly, we can furthermore find the ram air intakes, lovely combined with some printed detailing. That's always nice to see. And then, of course, we also have physical antennas, both on the underside, so the belly of the aircraft, and also on top of the fuselage. And here we then also get a bunch of printed details. So again, really lovely effort from NG Models combining physical and printed detailing. Looks really great. And then last but certainly not least, we do of course also have the remaining doors to the cargo compartments printed on here at the back of the aircraft, and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Boeing 747-8F of Atlas Air, still in the primer livery from NG Models in scale 1 to 400. And what can we say about this aircraft model? Well, first of all, I think it is just cool that NG Models has made such a model of the 747 still being in the production phase, so still with the primer colors. And despite it being an aircraft technically without a livery, I think they have done really well in adding as many details as possible so that it really does have something to offer collectors when looking at it. There are a bunch of small details everywhere, and that just really elevates the model overall. My personal highlight when it comes to printed detailing are really the engines. I think they have done an outstanding job with those. Really giving him a very lovely look. Of course, also when it comes to the physical detailing, it's hard to find anything really to criticize. The 747 mold of NG Models, I think, is brilliant. I think the overall finish of the model is also great. The landing gear, for example, looks really, really lovely. I mean, when I compare that to landing gears from Gemini Jazz, for example, I mean, it's like day and night. This is just how it should be. Of course, the landing gear does also have the feature of the rolling wheels, a feature that I'm personally actually not a huge fan of, because you have these tiny wheels on a tiny little metal pin, and if anything there breaks, well, you can only fix it with glue, and then this feature, well, doesn't work anymore. But, I mean, I know this is something many collectors out there want to have, and it works really well. I mean, the wheels roll really nicely on this model, which is also not always the case. So also here, I think that's a sign of the quality that NG Models has put into this model. Now, as far as I know, NG Models doesn't release official retail prices, but at least at the FMB shop, this retails at and around 90 euros, which I think even for a scale 400 model is at the higher range. So yeah, if it's really worth that much, that's something you have to determine yourself. I think for me, the biggest drawback with this model is actually the fact that it comes without a stand. I mean, it is prepared for it. It has the hole in the fuselage, and normally, again, it's not a feature that I really want with my models. I don't really need for scale 500 or 400 models a stand, but I think with this model, because it's so special, because it has so much to offer, I think it would have been warranted to add a stand, and I think for the price, honestly speaking, NG Models should have forked out a stand for the model. But if that is the biggest drawback I can find for the model, I think that's a sign how great this model really is, and why I unequivocally would say yes, this model is worth having in one's collection. Now with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed this video, then feel free to leave a like. If you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? And with that, thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.